Bah, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes sir, 3 bags full. One for the filmmaker, one for the cast, one for the crew, but none of these'll last. Bah, black sheep, have you any wool? Yes sir, 3 bags full. Undertone is the latest film distributed by A24 and comes to us from filmmaker Ian Tuason, who's done shorts in the past as his feature film debut, and this features Nina Curie as Evie. That's E-V-Y, not Eve, the one that blew our minds with Gwen Stefani. God, I feel so old referencing that song. But whatever happened to Eve? Let me know in the comments. Evie hosts the Undertone podcast every Friday night with her co-host Justin, voiced by Adam DeMarco, who basically is more of a believer. He couldn't leave her if he tried. Do, and song references will continue until the oral improves. I think that's how that phrase goes. Evie, however, is a known skeptic, and they just talk about all things creepy. They talk about, certain urban legends. They talk about certain things that could have happened, perhaps way in the past. Maybe certain, things need to be debunked. Maybe certain things smell like a run-over skunk. Maybe certain things smell just like they could have a grain of truth in them. So we just have to tweak them a little until they're nice, perky, and ripe, and then we can just flick them a little bit or bop them like bongos. I don't know what I'm on about. So Undertone received quite the marketing campaign. Honestly, it was actually insane how many times I saw this trailer. Granted, I see a lot of movies, but anytime A24 slaps their name on a film, even if they just pick it up for distribution and other studios are involved in actually making the film. Same with Neon Studios. Anytime those two particular studios put their name on something, I'm pretty much guaranteed to watch it if it's playing in my area. Fortunately, this was. I saw this and reminders of him back to back. Depending on what order you're seeing these in, you'll know what I thought of that one. So basically, this is a film that uses a lot of good sound design and good atmosphere and a one-location shoot. Literally a one-location shoot. We just stay in this house. We have, the camera panning around, stuff like that, and kind of rotating around. As basically the crux of this story is 10 audio files were sent from a strange email. And then as they listen to them, weird things start to go, basically like awry around both of them and everything. Almost like maybe you shouldn't go poking around, supernatural, possibly demonic shit that maybe you don't understand, you are not prepared to deal with. So yes, it is another A24 horror movie. It was marketed as the scariest movie you'll ever hear. And I will say, as far as sound design, as far as atmosphere, it captures enough of that. I think that Ian understood how to do that. And Nina does a good job as Evie. It is pretty much just zeroed in on her, by the way. If you are not a fan of basically 2 on-screen characters in an entire movie, you're probably not going to care much for this one, because Adam DeMarco literally does phone in his role. He's just on the other end. And Mama just killed a man, put a gun against his head. Oh, now Chris Von Erich's dead. I'm sorry. I'm not. But anyway, Michelle Duquette, she plays the mother, and the mother is not doing all that well, essentially. And as basically more of these audio files get listened to and certain messages are hidden, such as, things dealing with nursery rhymes and history and everything, maybe it's possible that those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That's pretty much the whole premise of this whole thing that lasts roughly about 90 minutes, give or take. And it also should have probably been a 30-minute short. Because unfortunately, this movie has atmosphere, has good sound design. I do like the fact that when she puts on the headphones, it locks out all the other sounds. And there are certain allegories between history, the stuff on the audio recordings, and what's going on in Evie's actual life. They'll get into, touch on a little bit in spoilers. But as far as the scariest movie you'll ever hear, yeah, it probably has really good, sound for the theater. And the theater I was in was, pretty goddamn good. Not like IMAX or whatever, but still a good sound design. And I'm sorry, but even the best sound system and some of the best technical stuff can only carry you so far when that's all you have. And while, again, Nina does well enough, the story is so thin, the plot really is almost non-existent. I mean, there are certain things that are referenced as far as back in history that I guess we're supposed to, like, mean a little bit of something, but really this just amounts to being like a paranormal activity movie and at best a mid-tier paranormal activity movie. It has just enough material to get you invested, but unfortunately starts to basically spin its own goddamn wheels to the point that you might get sick of it and might be checked out well before the third act revealed. It really isn't all that shocking. So I'm going to get into spoilers. It's in theaters if you want to check it out, and that's just your fair warning there. Anyway, 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So basically, for those that have seen the trailer, you've kind of seen the whole goddamn movie, just so you know. There's the stuff with the mother who is basically, practically like should be in hospice. She's being taken care of by Evie, and Evie is co-hosting with Justin, and Justin's calling in on this kind of stuff. And I thought they were going to go with the route of Justin, maybe being behind all this stuff. They didn't go that way. They probably should have, because it might have turned out a little bit better than what they ended up doing. But we find out a little bit about Evie as far as her mother being very devout religious. She wanted her to go to prayer. She wanted her to pray with her. And because she wasn't doing that and everything, the mother, suddenly feeling sick, now Evie's starting to feel a little bit of guilt. Also, these audio recordings send them down a rabbit hole of research, like Eleanor of Provence, read up on it and everything, stuff about, troubled youths that were basically, killed in their youthfulness. And, of course, we have the Virgin Mary. We have a lot of religious iconography, or at least enough of it. I mean, enough where it's basically as subtle as a sack of bricks or doorknobs to the skull. That's the thing about this movie. It's not subtle. It does have some really good atmosphere and some good production. That's all this movie has to offer, though, and that only is going to carry it so far. So basically, Evie does find out that she's pregnant. Turns out she has a boyfriend, Darren. That Justin is like, well, you probably should have left him because he's not really helping out all that much. He's always busy. We don't actually get to see Darren, by the way, but we do get to hear the voices of a guy named Mike and a girl named Jessa, who is Kenya Lynn Basidas, who is in Festival of the Living Dead, which was a terrible movie, by the way. I'm sorry. Nothing against her. The cast did fine. It actually had a fine opening, but the movie is terrible. But as these recordings keep going on, basically Mike decided to record Jessa because she was making weird noises. She was talking in her sleep, and it was giving him the creeps. And yeah, it wasn't exactly romantic. Har har. But the thing about it is, there are certain spikes in the audio, and things are getting played back, and it's like, as more stuff goes on, with these things, Justin finds out, I think it says Mike kill all. Not Mike. I'm not going to say the word, but I'll just say, if a man with that name wanted to hunt, there we go. But, and we don't see Justin at all. I can't understate, by the way, just how boring this ends up getting, as cool as the sound design is. This just ends up really, really struggling to get past the 40-minute mark without, obviously just stretching. Like, it is desperately trying to get to that last 30 minutes. And yeah, Paranormal Activity kind of did the same thing. Blair Witch did the same thing. A lot of found footage movies did the same thing. And there are some cool camera tricks, but none of it's really scary. Like, it doesn't even really sound creepy. It sounds great, but it doesn't really sound creepy. And the Baja Black Sheep thing that theme gets worn to death because, it goes down the whole deal of like medieval stuff and, creepy nursery rhyme stuff such as Rockabye Baby. As Evie gets more into this stuff, she's also realizing the stuff going on with her mother. We do hear early on some audio with her mother, wanting her to go to, do prayer with her. And after Evie finds out she's pregnant, then the whole thing about, Eleanor Province and one called and some character, basically, or, entity called Abazu. That basically ties back to King Solomon, all this stuff. I'm not going to get into it. You can go to Google to figure that stuff and everything because it's a big old rabbit hole, whatever you want to believe. But basically it has to do with, like children being tortured, essentially. And, people being tortured and mothers, having their children ripped from their arms. A lot of really creepy stuff going on that's far creepier than anything in this. Now, Evie isn't sure she wants to be a mother. Her mother, fell ill after Evie basically was like, well, you may have been there for me, but I don't have the time for you. We should always try to be there for our parents, by the way. Even if this movie's message isn't necessarily that, that's pretty much something that we should try to do, because our parents were there for us and to help raise us, so the least we could do is be there for them in their, final moments. But there's not a lot of creepiness to this. As they dive into more of these tapes, Jessa is basically singing to herself. There's stuff about a creepy doll that people slept with, a pole toy. And, Mike is recording all this stuff, and, some of these audio files are a little bit corrupted, and it turns out that the anonymous email was, call out to Abazu backwards. Okay. I mean, I don't necessarily know why in the world, we need to, go with that, because I think anybody that gleaned that and wanted to bother researching would have figured that out. So every card is basically on the table. Nothing's particularly shocking. And then as Evie feels like she's starting to lose it, and she's starting to see, things that may or may not be there, who knows, this shit's just playing with her mind. Her mother ends up out of bed. She has to get her back in the bed. And she's feeling guilty for how her mother has fallen ill and everything, and wish that she had more time. And then they decide to take calls. And they take a call from some guy that was the neighbor, and said, oh yeah, Mike and Jessa were the neighbors, or, were my neighbors. And there's weird shit going on. Weird drawings, drawings of kids all over the wall. There's a drawing that Evie found in the drawer and was writing with crayons, red and black and everything, and making a drawing of basically Abazu. And then there's a girl that calls in that is talking about a few things, creepy person. And then another one that says, you shouldn't have called out to her because it's what she wanted. And it turns out that the one that was calling in was named Abby. Yes, Abazu, all this. And it was a big old trick. All these files were a trick. You listen to the 10th file. You shouldn't have listened to the 10th file. And then I would say all hell starts breaking loose, but no. The kitchen's sort of torn up. Lights start bursting. And Evie basically is, just fully fucked up and everything. She obviously is creeped out by what the hell's going on here. And then, the film just ends up ending. It just ends up ending with weird noises, after seemingly, the mother who is possessed by Abazu, I assume, ends up attacking. We just hear this weird, noise stuff that we've just been hearing. This weird clicking noise we've just been hearing occasionally that Abazu makes. And none of it really ends up going anywhere. And then the movie just abruptly ends. And it's like, okay, that was it? That was it. That was Undertone, ladies and gentlemen. There isn't a lot to this movie. I mean, again, you could research a few of these, historical bits, whether the stuff's actually based in reality or shit that was just made up. And it's a little more fascinating than what they end up presenting here. It just isn't scary. It's just not. I mean, scariest movie you'll ever hear. I wasn't creeped out by it. Technically well made, but it was pretty hollow. And unfortunately, Undertone gets an F. It's just not that good. So anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Booska handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin, and until we revisit the A24 pile that has got to produce better stuff than this, once again, happy trails to you.